the Construction Record Podcast. I'm digital media Warren Frey at World of Concrete down in Las Vegas. And with me I have
Todd Wynne, Chief Innovation Officer at Wynne and O'Brien Construction.
And Henning Roedel, the robotics leader at DPR Construction.
And both of you just did a presentation on the future of robotics in construction. I'd like to start with what you guys said is already happening. So both of you gave great examples of what's happening. That's a little vague. Maybe we drill it down to what is helping people today to get the job done quicker.
Yeah, the first thing we did was we were really just trying to demystify that robots have been on our job sites for years, whether it was the teleoperated concrete pump or the robotic total station. So we were trying to show that these are just tools, but we did show some examples of some real world examples on how we've been using some more of these modern tools. So for RO, we've been piloting the HP Site Print layout printer, as well as Rugged Robotics layout printer, and the Hilti JaiBot.
Yeah, and at DPR Construction, we were focusing on pilots with Vita Inclinata Technologies, a crane load stabilization technology that makes crane picks safer and more efficient. We also talked about Dusty Robotics, another layout technology, which has been working for DPR, and then, of course, the Hilti JaiBot.
Yeah, I'd like to start with JaiBot because that was really cool. And it's one of the great things about going to these things is hearing about stuff I've never heard of before. So to boil it down, it basically, actually, you know what it does. You tell me what it does.
Sure. Yeah, so the JaiBot drills holes for MEP inserts, right? So it drills into overhead concrete floors, whether it's fluted deck, steel and metal deck, or just cast in place concrete. And it does so accurately, safely, and fast, right, with a high productivity rate. And so we love it because it's eliminating exposure to dust. It's taking that burden off the shoulders of people in the field, and it's making it easy work for a single operator.
And not only that, it's pretty fast. Like I think you said 30 holes in 15 minutes, which is what would take somebody a day to do.
Almost, yeah. It's if you multiply that by 2, that's probably a day's worth of work in a half hour.
Another one that was mentioned was Dusty, but there are other ones from other companies. I think HP makes one as well. But basically, it prints lines on the ground. It's like a Roomba with a line printer. That's how you.
No, that's
it down.
exactly it.
That's
it. It's a Roomba with a line printer that it's taking your layout file from the model, and then you're able to just print it right in real world coordinates.
And Todd, you said this is taking BIM, which you are a self-confessed nerd of,
Yeah.
and putting it in the real world finally.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what's so exciting. For the last decade, we've been on this journey of trying to build from the model and really connecting that BIMtopian world with the real world of operations. So really having that interstitial layer of layout and survey and control, that's what ties the model world and the model space to the real world. And now we're starting to see these robots can start leveraging those model files and even just some traditional field engineering techniques.
Now, that's what we have happening right now. Maybe we should dive into the future. I'm sure you guys have got a lot to say about what's coming, let's say, in the next year or two, and then the next 10 years.
Yeah, with an asterisk that we might be wrong.
Exactly, yeah. Like any predictions of the future.
Yeah, totally. But no, Henning and I think we definitely spend a lot of our mental energy on imagining what tomorrow will look like based on the resources that are coming available today. So we did preview some new things that we're going to be testing next year for RO. SuperDroid Robots is one. The Groundhog, it's a passive data collection robot where it has a 360 camera on top and it just captures a photosphere autonomously throughout the project on a virtual path that you pre-program. It uses standard DeWalt batteries, so pretty simple deployment, and it's pretty affordable from what we can tell. So hopefully we'll come back and share some learnings next year on how those pilots went.
Yeah, and similar to that, we're also piloting a service from a company called Field AI, where they're taking taking quadruped robots, robot dogs, and making them autonomous. And again, capturing what's happening in the field with 360 photos, laser scans, and doing so with a lot less human input that's typically needed today.
And one of the ththings I found interesting about Field AI is not only the fact that ex-NASA or JPL engineers are working on it and taking what they learned about going to Mars and applied that to the real world. Obviously, Mars is still the real world, but here.
Yeah.
But you also pointed out that perception matters because there was somebody in the office that was scared of this thing because it's a robot, and that it's not just one person, that's plenty of people, I'm sure. So they renamed it Nugget. So maybe you could talk about sort of the pushback you guys get, because I'm sure you do on these things.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, obviously, when you think about automations, you wonder about those robots or those machines, those tools taking jobs, right? And honestly, we're in an industry, we're in a time period right now where we need these tools. Not only do we have a gap in productivity in our industry that's been persisting for decades, we're facing the labor shortage, right? We can't fill the jobs fast enough. To build the work that we need to build to support society. And so that's a common, I'd say, misconception about automation and what's happening today. Similar to that, though, people have visceral reactions to these machines, and the more human-like or natural-like they're facing, I think the more people
Scary it gets.
the scarier it gets, right? Hollywood has warned us about
100
that.
years of good movies.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
That's what we're battling with.
Yeah.
Is that stigma.
And here's the thing: some people are okay with it, some people aren't, and you want to be cognizant of that and look out for that, and
Yeah.
work on that.
First, change is scary. Then, especially changes around things that we don't understand. That's just on another level of scary. But if you really break it down and understand that it really is the evolution of a power drill, right? And it's still just using ones and zeros and math. It does not have any kind of sentience, any kind of consciousness. It can't create its own objectives. So it's really just a modern tool. And it's interesting how we don't know how the computers in our pockets, our phones work, but we trust and use those every day. So one thing that we try to say is we give that comparison and then say we're going to keep experiencing more magic in achieving the outcomes we want to receive. And sometimes we're not always going to understand how they all work, but if you start digging in, you can begin to understand the ones and zeros behind it.
And another thing that was pointed out is this, in some ways, opens the field up to people who never were able before. Like, say, somebody's in a wheelchair. That doesn't matter if you're operating. Or another point you guys made was that Gen Z and millennials aren't as willing to get dirty, and they don't have to anymore.
Right. Yeah, our industry has never been that attractive when we're saying, hey, come, especially where we build in Texas constantly, is come stand on a pan deck when it's 100 degrees and pour concrete. It's not the most attractive, but I think Henning said it best during our session of just that, hey, robots are cool. The young workforce, they will want to come and be attracted to working with this. And we need to exploit the innovations that are happening in our industry to attract that workforce.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the startups and the people who make them up, and it's the millennials and the Gen Zs, and they're contributing to construction, not directly, right? But they're building these new tools, and some of them are going to come into industry because they know how to use them, and they're going to be they're going to have very successful careers, right? And they're going to train others, and it's attracting bright minds, it's attracting young minds to our industry, and that's exciting. But it opens up the opportunity as well for people who have bodies that are no longer able to work in our industry, but they still want to contribute. They love the work. The veterans of the industry.
So much knowledge, tacit knowledge that our industry is losing that we can reignite and activate.
Right. And you also mentioning startups, that there's a whole bunch of money coming into construction that was never there before.
Yeah. So, the numbers right now, we're looking over the last 7 or 8 years, about $8 billion invested just in the U.S. I think the number globally is closer to $60 billion. And it's money that we can be leveraging as an industry, right? It's pouring into startups, and they want access to our job sites so they can test their products and get the feedback. They're going to make it cheap for us to apply these new innovations, and we're all the more better for it, right? We know the industry needs to change. What we've been doing for the last decades, the last generation, is no longer applicable in today's world. We have to adapt.
And this is not a good statistical sample size, which is why I'm not ChatGPT, but this room was full. People were interested. That probably has changed over the last few years from what you guys saw before. So maybe you could tell me what the interest level has been and is now.
Oh, it absolutely has. I mean, even just from the panel last year, I think we had about half the room.
Right.
Seeing standing room only today was actually, I think, really rewarding for Henning and I, because this is a journey that we cannot move farther alone. we need everyone to lean in with curiosity. And really, it's not that we're trying to get them to believe in this future. We're just asking for the lowest level ask, which is just be curious with us. Let's see, let's experiment and learn if we can discover a better way at doing this. I'm going to use Henning's 3Ds: dull, dirty, or dangerous task. So it's great seeing the participation. Hopefully next year we have a bigger room, a bigger stage, and many more activated thought leaders.
Yeah, you kept pulling guys out of the audience and saying, you should be up next.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, that's one of our goals with this talk, is to have someone from the audience up on stage with us next year.
Yes.
And
I was just going to say that Trevor said at the beginning, this was the only session on robotics at the World of Concrete this year. We'd like to see half a dozen sessions next year. So if you're listening, come be a part of the movement.
And in the meantime, if people are interested, I'm sure they are by listening to all the stuff you guys have talked about, where should they go to find out more?
Feel free to hit us up on LinkedIn. I mean, we're both on LinkedIn, and there's many others, probably even people in your region that also are thinking the same way. And the best advice we can give you is don't do it alone. It's the old African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So find someone else to partner with. And maybe it just starts over a cup of coffee of saying, hey, I saw this. Have you seen this? And then the other thing we talked about today was, don't just attach yourself to the solutions. Don't be obsessed with the solutions. Be obsessed with your problems. What's a problem that your specific company or organization needs to overcome to really move the needle in your success?
Yeah. Okay. If you're having trouble hiring that one trade person or that one specific skill set, look for that in the tools that are coming out today. And if you're not finding it, go to these communities, these startup communities, go to the investor websites and say, hey, I need this, right? I need this today, tomorrow, and the day after that. And once you get that word out, then the funding will start to flow, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.